Parzival, A Romance of the Middle Ages by Wolfram von Eschenbach, Book One. If inconstancy is the heart's neighbor, the soul will not fail to find it bitter. Blame and praise alike befall when a dauntless man's spirit is black and white mixed like the magpie's plumage. Yet he may see blessedness after all, for both colors have a share in him, the color of heaven and the color of hell. Inconstancy's companion is all black and takes on the hue of darkness, while he of steadfast thoughts clings to white. This flying metaphor will be much too swift for dullards. They will not be able to think it through, because it will run from them like a startled rabbit. Mirrors coated on the back with tin, and blind men's dreams, these catch only the surface of the face, and that dim light cannot steadfastly endure, even though it may make fleeting joy real. Anyone who grabs the hair in the palm of my hand where there isn't any has indeed learned how to grab close. And if I cry ouch, it will only show what kind of a mind I have. Shall I look for loyalty precisely where it vanishes, as fire in running water, dew in the sun? Never have I met a man so wise, but that he would have liked to find out what authority this story claims and what good lessons it provides. On that score, it never wants for courage, now to flee, now to charge, dodge, and return, condemn, and praise. Whoever can make sense out of all these turns of chance has been well treated by wisdom, or whoever does not sit too tight or walk astray, but in general understands. The thoughts of a false man lead to hellfire, but they beat upon high dignity like hail. His loyalty has a tail so short that it couldn't slap back at the third bite if it were flicking flies in a forest. These various definitions are by no means directed at men solely. For women, I will set up these same goals. Any woman willing to mark my advice shall know where to bestow her praise and honors, and, accordingly, on whom to bestow her love and respect, so that she will not rue the giving of her purity and devotion. I pray to God that good women may follow the proper mean. Modesty is a capstone over all virtues. I need not wish them anything better than that. She who is false shall win false praise. How durable is thin ice that gets the hot August sun? Just so quickly will her renown decay. Many a woman's beauty is praised afar, but if the heart within is counterfeit, I would praise her as I would praise a jewel of blue paste set in gold. Anyone true to her womanhood I will not examine as to her complexion or the heart's external roof, for if she is well protected within her heart, her praise will not be paid amiss. If I were to tell of men and women aright, as I understand them, it would be a long tale, but now listen to the manner of this story. It will bring you word of both joy and sorrow, and delight and distress accompany it as well. Assuming there were 3 men instead of me alone, each possessed of ability equal to mine, it would still be fantastic skill if they set forth to you what I single-handed mean to set forth. They would find it a task indeed. I mean to tell you once again a story that speaks of great faithfulness, of the ways of womanly women, and of a man's manhood so forthright that never against hardness was it broken. Never did his heart betray him, he all steel, when he came to combat, for there his victorious hand took many a prize of praise. A brave man slowly wise. Thus I hail my hero, sweetness to women's eyes, and yet to women's hearts a sorrow. From wrongdoing a man in flight. The one whom I have thus chosen is, story-wise, as yet unborn, he of whom this adventure tells, and to whom many marvels there befall. It is still the custom, as it used to be the custom wherever Latin law prevails and formerly prevailed, and, as you have heard without me, it is the custom still in a corner of our German land as well, that whoever was the ruler of a country over there would command without any feeling of wrongdoing. This is the truth, and no mistake, that the eldest brother should have his father's entire inheritance. This was the misfortune of the younger ones, since death deprived them of the rights which were theirs while their fathers were still alive. Before, it was held in common, whereas this way the eldest alone possessed it. A wise man ordained that age should have property, for youth has many a thing of value, while age has sighs and sorrows. Never was anything so wretched as old age and poverty. That kings, counts, dukes, and I am telling you no lie, should be dispossessed of their lands to an eldest child, that is a strange custom. In this fashion, Gamarette, the warrior gallant and brave, lost the castles and land where his father had borne scepter and crown in splendor and with great royal power, until he lay dead in knightly combat. Thereupon he was deeply mourned. He had maintained all loyalty and honor until his very death. His eldest son then summoned before him the princes of the land, and in knightly fashion they came, for by rights they should receive great fiefdoms from him. When they had come to court, and their claims had been heard, and they had all received their fiefdoms, now hear what they said. They made, as their loyalty bade them do, rich and poor alike, the whole crowd of them, earnest but futile request that the king should increase his brotherly fidelity to Gameret, and do honor to himself by not driving him away, but by assigning him an estate within the country, so that it might be clear on what the lord based his claim to free status and a name. The king was not at all displeased, and he said, "You know how to make fitting requests. I will grant this and more besides. Why not call my brother Gameret the Angevin? Anjou is my country. Let us both take our names therefrom." And the noble king went on to say, "My brother may look to me for further steadfast help than I can quickly mention here. He shall be one of my household, and I shall clearly show you all that one mother bore us both. He has little, and I have plenty. And this my hand shall so share with him that my salvation shall not be forfeit before him who giveth and who taketh away, as both those things beseem him." When the mighty princes all heard their lord profess such good faith, it was a glad day for them. Each one bowed before him. Nor did Gameret remain silent at their assent, but spoke as his lord prompted. Graciously he said to the king, "My lord and brother, if I were to be of your or any man's household, I would have everything arranged for my comfort. But now, as you are honorable and wise, test my worth, counsel me as to what is proper, and then assist me therein. I have nothing but my armor. If I had accomplished more in it, it would bring me far more renown, and I should somewhere be remembered." And Gameret went on to say, "I have 16 squires, 6 of them equipped with armor. Give me in addition 4 pages of good breeding and high lineage. For them nothing shall be stinted that my hand may ever win. I want to see the world. I have already traveled a bit. If luck sticks by me, I shall gain a good woman's greeting. If I then serve her, and if I am worthy to do so, my best thought will direct me to act with true loyalty. May God show me the ways of blessedness. We have ridden together, you and I, while our father Gandon still had your kingdom, and many a grievous pain have we both suffered for love's sake. You were both knight and thief. You could serve a lady and yet dissemble. If only I too could steal women. Oh, if only I had your skill and the true favor of women." The king sighed and said, "Alas, that I ever saw you, since with jesting unconcern you have hacked to pieces my heart that was left whole before by proposing that we part. My father left us both riches aplenty, and in respect to these I shall stake out equal limits with you, for you are dear to my heart. Bright jewels, red gold, attendants, weapons, horses, garments, accept as many of these from my hand as you wish, to travel as you will, and to maintain your knightly generosity. Your manhood is of a rare sort, and if you were born in Gelstrom, or if you came from Ranculate, I would still like to keep you here with me, because I am so fond of you. You are my brother. Sir, you praise me perforce, because your knightly breeding so commands. Let your help be shown accordingly. If you and my mother share your riches with me, I shall rise and not go down. My heart, however, yearns upward to the heights. I do not know why it is so full of life that the left side of my breast swells to bursting. Oh, where is my desire driving me? That I shall find out if I can. But now my day of parting has come." The king granted him everything, more than he had asked, 5 choice and tested horses, the best in all his land, brave, strong, and not slow, and many a precious golden vessel, and many a bar of gold. Nor did the king begrudge in the least filling 4 traveling chests for him, into which went many a jewel until they were full to the brim. And the pages in charge of all these things were handsomely dressed and mounted. There was no lack of grieving when he went to see his mother, and she clasped him tightly to her. "Fils du roi Gandin, will you not stay any longer with me?" said that womanly woman. "Alas, I gave you birth, and you are also Gandin's child. Is God in his help blind, or is he deaf, that he does not heed me? Must I now have fresh grief? I have buried my heart's strength, the sweetness of my eyes. If he robs me still further, when he is supposed to be a judge, then the story lies that he speaks about his help, for he has abandoned me." Then the young Angevin said, "God comfort you, lady, for my father. We shall both mourn for him, but no one can bring you mournful tidings about me. For my valor's sake, I go to seek knightly deeds in foreign lands. That, lady, is how matters stand." Then the queen said, "Since you are turning your mind and your service to lofty love, dear son, do not disdain to take of my wealth upon your journey. Bid your attendants receive from me 4 heavy traveling chests which contain bolts of pfeffel silk, whole ones that have not been cut, and many a bolt of precious samite. Sweet boy, let me know the time when you will come back again, for you are the source of my joy." "Lady, I have no notion in what country I shall be. Only wherever I go, you have bestowed your nobleness upon me as was befitting for a knight. Moreover, the king has released me in such a fashion that my service shall show my gratitude. I assure you that you will hold him in greater respect because of it, however things may go with me." As the story tells us, this dauntless hero had, through love and a woman's friendship, received gifts worth 1,000 marks. Even today, they could be pawned to a Jew for that amount, and he would not disdain them. These were sent by one who was his beloved. By his service he had gained women's love and greetings, but seldom had he been granted consolation for the pangs of love. The warrior took his leave. Never again did his eye behold mother, brother, or country. That was a great loss to many. To anyone who had shown him a favor of any kind before his departure he paid great thanks. He deemed their favor more than enough, and in his courtesy it never occurred to him that they had done only what duty required. His nature was plainer than plain. Anyone who tells his own value will meet disbelief. His fellow men should tell it, and those who beheld his actions away from home, then the story would be credited. Gameret's ways were those that moderation dictated and no other. Boast he rarely did. Great honor he meekly bore. Haughtiness had no part in him. Yet this noble man felt there was no one who wore a crown, neither king nor emperor nor empress, of whose household he wished to be, except one who had supreme power on earth over all lands. Such was his heart's will. He was told that in Baghdad there was a man so powerful that 2/3 of the earth or more was subject to him. To heathens his name was so great that he was called the Baruch, and such was his power that many kings were vassals to him, and subject were their crowns. The office of Baruch exists today, and just as Christian law looks to Rome, as our faith enjoins, there the heathen order is seen, and from Baghdad they take their papal rule, deeming this entirely proper, and the Baruch gives them absolution for their sins. From 2 brothers of Babylon, Pompey and Epomedon, the Baruch had taken Nineveh, which had belonged to all their ancestors, and they had waged a stout defense. Now came the young Angevin, to whom the Baruch showed great favor, and for his services Gameret, the worthy knight, accepted pay. Allow him now to have a coat of arms other than the one Gandon his father had previously given him. As one with high aspirations, the knight chose an anchor, ermine white, to be sewn on his horse's caparison, and others, necessarily identical, on his shield and on his garment. Greener than emerald was his saddle gear, while of the hue of Akmardi, that is, a silk material and superior to samite. He had his surcoat and gambazon made, with anchors of ermine sewn thereon and golden ropes looped through them. His anchors had not tasted cape nor continent, nor been cast anywhere. This knight was to bear that weight of heraldry to many a foreign land, noble stranger that he was, and despite the sign of the anchor, he was never to find any place to dwell or tarry. Through how many lands did he ride? Around how many did he sail in ships? If I were to swear to that, my word as a knight, given in lieu of an oath, would tell you just what the story says. I have no other evidence, and it says that his manly strength won fame throughout heathendom, from Morocco to Persia. Elsewhere, too, his hand prevailed, before Damascus and before Aleppo, and wherever knightly deeds were done, before Araby and throughout all Araby, till he was free from challenge from any man whatsoever. Such was the reputation he acquired. His heart's desire thirsted for fame. All their deeds melted away before him, and became almost as nothing. That is what every man was taught who jousted with him, and in Baghdad people said of him that his courage never faltered. From there he travelled to the kingdom of Zazamank, where they were all mourning for Isenhart, who had lost his life in the service of a lady. There, too, he had been driven by Bellicana, that sweet lady without guile, and because she never granted him her love, he lay dead of love for her. His kinsmen were now avenging him openly and secretly by besieging the lady with an army. She was in the midst of a brave defence when Gameret came to her country, where Fridebrand the Scotsman with ship-borne army had laid waste before he departed. Now hear how things went with our knight. The sea with such a storm cast him there that he barely escaped with his life, but into the harbour he came sailing toward the Queen's great hall, down from which he was observed by many. He looked across the field, where many a tent was pitched on all sides of the city, except toward the sea, and there 2 powerful armies were encamped. He bade his men inquire whose castle this was, for neither he nor any of his shipmen knew. His messengers were informed that it was Patalamund, and graciously was the answer made to him. They implored him by their gods to help them. Their need was urgent. They were fighting with death itself. When the young Angevin heard of their grievous distress, he offered his services for hire, as many a knight still does, and asked them to tell him what would be the prize for incurring the enemy's hatred. With one voice the sick and the well declared all their gold and all their jewels should be his. He should be master of it all, and have a fine life among them. But he required little pay, for of the gold of Araby he had brought along many an ingot. Black as night were all the people of Zazamank, and he felt ill at ease. Yet he gave orders for lodgings to be taken. It pleased them to give him the best. The ladies were still leaning out of the windows to see him, and they had a good look at his pages and his armor with its adornments. On his ermine shield the generous hero displayed I don't know how many sable pelts, which the Queen's marshal discerned as an anchor, and the sight did not displease him. Then his eyes told him that he had seen either this knight or his double before, and that must have been at Alexandria when the Bruch was besieging that city. No one equaled his achievement then. Thus he who was rich in courage rode cheerfully into the city. 10 pack horses he ordered loaded, and through the streets they went, 20 squires riding behind them. His household staff were seen up ahead, for pages, cooks, and the latter's helper lads had gone on up front. Stately was his retinue. 12 high-born youths rode next after the squires, all well-bred and with sweet manners, several of them Saracens. Next came 8 horses, caparisoned in sandal silk, one and all. The 9th bore his saddle, while a shield I have mentioned before was carried by a squire of cheerful mien, walking alongside. After these rode trumpeters, who are still required today, and a drummer kept hitting his drum and swinging it high in the air. The master would not have thought much of the lot if flute players had not been riding along with the rest, and 3 good fiddlers. None of these was in any great hurry. He himself rode last, and with him his ship captain, a man famed and wise. All the people in the city, men and women alike, were Moors. Now the master beheld many a shattered shield riddled with spears, many of them being hung out on display on walls and doors. Sorrow enough they had. At the windows, so placed as to get the air, was the bed of many a man so badly wounded that even if he could get a doctor, he still would never recover. These had really faced the foe. So it goes with a man who is unwilling to flee. Numbers of horses were led past him, pierced and hacked with weapons. To right and left he saw many a dusky lady with complexions of the raven's hue. His host received him graciously, a thing that brought him joy later on, and he was a man rich in courage, who had dealt many a thrust and many a blow with his hand when he was guarding a gate. With him he found many a knight, whose arms hung in slings and whose heads were in bandages. Their wounds were such that they still performed knightly service in spite of them, and had not abated their powers. The governor of the city then graciously bade his guest not to refrain from making any claim whatsoever upon his goods and person. Next, he conducted him to his wife, who kissed Gameret, little as he relished it. Then they went to breakfast, and when that was over, the marshal left him directly to go to the queen, and ask her for a very considerable messenger's reward. "Lady," he said, Our distress has ended in joy. This man we have welcomed here is a knight of such a kind that we shall ever have to thank our gods who brought him here for bethinking themselves to do so. Now tell me by your loyalty who this knight may be. Lady, he is a doughty warrior, a soldier in the pay of the Baruch, and an Angevin of high lineage. Oh, how little does he hold back when they set him on the enemy. How skillfully he dodges and returns this way and that way. He teaches the enemy trouble. I saw him fight once when the Babylonians were supposed to be liberating Alexandria, and when they were trying to drive the Baruch away by force. What a lot of them were killed off in their defeat. Then that wonderful man did such feats that they had no choice but to run for it. Besides, I heard people say of him that he should be recognized as having won the highest honors over many a country by his own right hand. Now, find out when and how, and arrange for him to see me here. There is a truce all day long, so the hero can ride up here to see me. Or should I go down there? He is of a different color than us. Oh, I do hope he won't be offended by that. I should have liked to find out first whether my people advise me to offer him honors. And if he designs to come to me, how am I supposed to receive him? Is he of high enough birth for me, so that my kiss will not be misbestowed? Lady, he is known to be the kin of kings. I pledge my life on that. I will tell your prince's lady to put on rich apparel, and wait here with you until he and I ride over to see you. You may so advise your ladies. For when I ride down now, I will bring you up this worthy guest, who never lacked for sweet virtue. Very little of this was left unperformed, and the marshal worked deftly to carry out his lady's behest. Rich apparel was quickly furnished Gamarette, which he put on. I heard reported that it was elegant. Anchors heavy with Arabian gold were sewn thereon as he desired. Then that reward of love mounted a horse that a Babylonian had ridden in a joust against him. He had knocked him off it, and the fellow didn't like that at all. And did his host ride with him? Yes, he and his knights as well, and indeed they were happy to do so. Together then they rode and drew rein in front of the palace, and up there were many knights, all dressed of course in their finest. His pages entered ahead of him, 2 by 2, hand in hand, and their master discovered a host of ladies within, resplendently attired. The great queen's eyes caused her grievous pain when they beheld the Angevin, who, being of love's color, unlocked her heart whether she wished it or not. Her womanliness had kept it locked until then. She advanced a little way toward him, and invited her guest to kiss her. She took him by the hand, and along the wall that faced the enemy they sat down on a broad window seat, on an upholstered cushion of samite, beneath which a soft mattress was spread. If there is anything brighter than daylight, the queen in no way resembled it. A woman's manner she did have, and was on the other counts worthy of a knight. But she was unlike a dewy rose. Her complexion was black of hue. Her crown was a lucent ruby, through which her head could be seen. The hostess told her guest that his coming gave her pleasure. Sir, I have heard much report of your knightly achievement. In your courtesy do not take offense if I make lament to you of the sorrow which I carry close to my heart. My help, lady, will not fail you. Let my hand be marked for your service wherever it can avert what it is or was that troubles you. I am only one man, but though it may impress the enemy but little, I offer you my shield against anyone who is doing or has done you harm. Courteously, one prince spoke up. If we had a leader, we wouldn't spare the enemy much, now that Fridebrand is gone. He is defending his own country out there. A king named Hernant, whom he slew for Herlinda's sake. His kinsmen are doing him damage aplenty, and show no signs of letting up. He left heroes behind here, like Duke Hutiger, whose knighthood has caused us many a grief, and his associates, and their fighting has skill and force. Then, too, Gachier of Normandy, that wise and great warrior, has many a soldier here. Calet of Hoskerast has even more knights here, and angry guests they are, too. All these were brought into this country by the Scotsman, King Fridebrand, and his comrades 4, together with many a fighting man. To the west there along the sea lies Isenhardt's army, tears flowing from their eyes. Never has any man beheld them in public or in private, but that he has marveled at their immense grief. Their heart's showers have brought on floods since their lord perished in the joust. With knightly courtesy, the guest said to his hostess, "Tell me, if you will be so kind, Why you are being attacked with anger and violence. You have many a bold knight. It grieves me that they are so weighed down with the enemy's hatred to their harm. That I shall tell you, sir, since you ask. I was served by a knight, and a worthy man he was, a blossoming branch of virtues, a hero bold and wise, a root-taking fruit of loyalty. His courtesy outweighed the courtesy of all others. He was more modest than a woman, and daring and bravery were contained in his person. A knight more generous never grew before in any land. Of what may grow in times hereafter, I know nothing. Let other people tell of that. To all false conduct he was deaf, and in blackness of hue he was, like me, a Moor. His father was Tancanus, a king, and he too had high renown. My beloved's name was Isenhart. My womanhood was ill-advised when I accepted his service in love, because it did not turn out to his joy, and for that I must bear sorrow forever. They imagined that I had him murdered, but I am little capable of treachery, though his men accuse me of it. He was dearer to me than to them. I am not without witnesses, for that I have to prove, and my gods and his gods both know the real truth. He caused me many a grief, but my over-modest womanhood delayed his reward and lengthened my own sorrow. My virgin reticence spurred the hero on to much knightly fame. I was testing him to see whether he could be my friend. That was soon demonstrated. For my sake he gave all his knightly equipment away. What stands yonder like a palace? That is a lofty tent which the Scotsman brought to this field. Once the hero was without his armor, his body was little spared. Life seemed pointless to him, and he sought out many an adventure unarmed. When things stood thus, a prince named Parzival, one of my household and free of all cowardice, rode out to adventure where great harm did not miss him. In the forest of Azaguk, he found no mock death in a charge against a brave man, who likewise met his end there. That was my beloved Isenhart. They both felt a spear through their shields and through their bodies, and I, poor woman, still grieve for this. Both deaths distress me still. Grief flowers in the soil of my loyalty. I have never become the wife of any man. Gamarette reflected how she was a heathen, and yet never did more womanly loyalty glide into a woman's heart. Her innocence was a pure baptism, as was also the rain that wet her, that flood which flowed from her eyes down upon the furs upon her bosom. The practice of sorrow was her delight, and the true instruction received from grief. She went on to say, Then from across the sea came the King of Scots against me with his army, for my friend was his maternal uncle's son. But they could do me no more hurt than had been done me by Isenhart, I must confess. That lady fetched frequent sighs, and through her tears cast many a shy glance, as strangers will, at Gamarette. Her eyes told her heart that he was handsome, and she could also judge of fair complexions, for she had seen many a fair-skinned heathen before. Between the two there sprang up a genuine desire. She looked at him, he looked at her. Then she ordered them to pour the parting wine-cup. That she would have left undone if she had dared, and it vexed her that it could not be left undone, because it always drove knights away who liked talking to a woman. Yet she was now his, and he had given her the feeling that his life was now the lady's life. Hereupon he stood up and said, Lady, I am inconveniencing you. I have sat longer than I should, and that was thoughtless of me. I most humbly regret that your sorrow is so great. Make disposition of me, lady, wherever you will, and there my vengeance will be. I shall serve you in any way I may. Sir, she replied, I am fully confident you will. His host the governor now left little undone to pass the time for him. He inquired whether he would like to take a ride out. And you can see where we are fighting, and how our gates are defended. Gamarette, that worthy warrior, said he would like to see where deeds of knighthood had taken place. Several knights of doughty mien rode down with the hero, some of them seasoned, some of them fresh. They led him around by 16 gates, explaining to him that not one of these had been shut, since Isenhart has been avenged in anger upon us. By night and by day our fighting has been the same. We have not closed one of them since. Before 8 gates Isenhart's loyal men do battle with us. They have done us much injury, and they fight in anger, these princes high-born, these kings' vassals of Azaguk. Over brave companies before each gate, flew a bright flag with a transfixed knight thereon. After Isenhart lost his life, such was the coat of arms his men had chosen. But against that device we have another, with which we assuage their grief. Our banner may be recognized by the 2 fingers it shows outstretched from a hand to represent the oath. That never did anything so grievous befall her as when Isenhart lay dead. That brought my lady's heart sorrow. So there stands the queen, the Lady Bellicana, sharply outlined in black upon white samite. And ever since we saw their emblem, their loyalty brings them grief. These banners fly over the gateways high. Before the other 8 gates, proud Fridebrand's army still attacks us, baptized men from across the sea. Each gate is commanded by a prince who leads the sallies out with his banner. We have captured a Count of Gachiers, who is offering us a good deal of money. He is Calet's sister's son, and whatever Calet does to us, he has to make good. Such luck seldom comes our way. Of green meadow there is mighty little, but it is perhaps 30 horse-charge lengths of sandy land from the moat out to their tents, and there many a joust takes place. His host had this report to give him. One knight never fails to come out for jousting. If he were to do his service in vain for her who sent him out, what then would be the use of his bold challenge? This is the proud Utigr. About him I would like to tell you more. Ever since we have been under siege here, that reckless fellow has appeared every morning before the gate opposite the great hall. What is more, many a lady's favor has been taken from that brave man by virtue of his ramming them through our shields, and these have been declared of great value when the heralds have picked them off. He has brought down many a knight of ours. He loves to be seen, and our womenfolk praise him too. And when women praise a man, he is known. He has the praise at hand and his heart's desire. Now the weary sun had gathered its bright rays in, and the ride had come to an end. The guest rode back with his host, and there he found supper ready. I must tell you about their meal. It was set out with propriety, and he was served in knightly fashion. Resplendent, the great queen appeared at his table. Here was heron, there was fish. She had ridden down to see it herself, that he was being properly attended, and her maidens had come with her. She knelt down to his displeasure, and with her own hand cut up a portion of the night's food. The lady was delighted with her guest. Then she served him his wine, and took good care of him. He also observed her gestures and her words. At the foot of his table sat his minstrels, and opposite sat his chaplain. Shyly he looked at the lady, and with some embarrassment said, I am not accustomed, lady, to being served with such honor as you offer me here. If I may say so to you, I would have requested such treatment this evening as I am worthy of, and you would not have ridden down here. If I may venture to request it of you now, lady, allow me to live in proper moderation. You have shown me too much honor. Still she would not desist, and going over to where his pages were sitting, she urged them to eat heartily. This she did by way of honor to her guest. These young gentlemen were one and all charmed with the queen. Nor did the lady then forget to go over to where the governor was sitting with his wife. The queen raised the drinking cup and said, Let me commend our guest to you. The honor is yours. This I urge upon you both. She made her farewells, and yet she walked over once again to her guest. His heart felt the burden of love for her, and the same was true of her for him. Her heart and her eyes declared it, for they shared the burden with her. Courteously the lady said, Command, sir, and whatever you desire I shall perform, for you are worthy of it. Now grant me permission to withdraw. If good repose is granted you, we shall be most happy. Of gold were her torch holders, and 4 torches were borne before her. In this way she rode up to where there were torches aplenty. Now they went on eating no longer. The lord was both joyous and sad. He was pleased to be shown great honor, but on the other hand distress tormented him, and that was mighty love, who bows lofty spirits down. The hostess retired for the night immediately. Then a bed was prepared with care for the hero, to whom the host said, Sleep soundly, and rest well tonight. You will need it. With that he bade his followers leave. The guests' pages had their beds arranged in a circle around his, with their heads all toward his, as was his custom. Tall candles stood there, brightly burning. The hero found it irksome that the night was so long, for again and again he felt his helplessness before the black Moorish queen of the land. He kept twisting like a will-o'-wisp so that his joints cracked. War and love were what he wanted. Now pray that these to him be granted. Loud was the throbbing of his heart as it swelled with yearning for knightly deeds, till his warrior's breast strained as the bow strains the bowstring. His desire was all too intense. Sleepless the hero lay till he saw the grey of dawn, though it was not yet bright daylight. Then one who was his chaplain was ready for Mass, which he sang for God and for him. They brought him his armor, and he rode out to where the jousting was. Directly he mounted a horse that was capable of both headlong charges and swift leaps, responding agilely when it was checked. He was wearing his anchor on his tall helmet as he rode toward the gate, and there men and women declared they had never seen a knight so handsome. Their gods were supposed to look like him. Stout spears were brought up, and how was he equipped? His horse wore iron covering for its protection against blows, and over this was laid a second covering that was light of weight and made of green samite. His surcoat and gambeson were also a green akmardi made in the city of Araby. I tell you no lie when I say his shield, straps, and the fastenings that went with them were unbleached thongs studded with precious stones. Refined in fire was the red gold of his shield boss. His service was for love's reward, and a sharp fight weighed lightly with him. The queen was sitting in the window with her ladies about her. Look now. There was Huitiger at the very spot where he had often won the prize before, and when he saw this knight coming toward him at a gallop, he thought, "When and how did that Frenchman get into this country? Who sent that proud man here? If I ever took him for a Moor, my best wits would have been a fool." They did not delay the onslaught. Both spurred their horses from a gallop to full career. A fine show of knightly valor they made of it, too, and did not fail to provide each other a joust. The splinters of bold Huitiger's lance flew into the air, and his opponent's fighting knocked him backward off his horse onto the grass, something he was not accustomed to. Over to him rode Gamarette and trampled him down, but he picked himself up again with energy and showed a will to put up a defense. Gamarette's lance, however, had pierced his arm, and he asked for guarantee of safety and surrender. He had met his master. "Who is it that has conquered me?" asked the bold man, to which the victor replied, "I am Gamarette, the Angevin." The other said, "I give you my guarantee." This was accepted, and he sent him into the city, and much praised he was by the ladies who had witnessed it. Now Gachier of Normandy hurried up that proud warrior, rich in valor and a stout jouster, and the undaunted Gamarette waited in readiness for the second onrush. The iron head of his spear was broad, and its shaft firm. The two strangers met, but with unequal prowess, for Gachier was thrown, horse and all, in a joust fall, and was compelled to guarantees of surrender whether he liked it or not. Gamarette, the warrior, said, "Your hand has given me guarantee, after having put up a manly defense. Now ride to the Scottish army, and bid them spare us their attacks, if they will be so kind, and follow me into the city." Whatever he ordered or bade was carried out exactly. The Scots were forced to cease their warfare. Up now rode Caillet, but from him Gamarette turned away, for he was his mother's sister's son. How then could he do him an injury? Though the Spaniard called after him enough. An ostrich he wore on his helmet, and the man was dressed, as I must tell you, in feffel silk, wide and long. The field rang in the hero's wake, for the little bells he wore set up a ringing. A flower of manly beauty was he. In the battle of beauty his features carried the day, until the coming of two who lived hereafter, Beacour, son of Lot, and Parzival, who were not present here. They were as yet unborn, but later they were esteemed for their beauty. Gachier seized him by the bridle. "Your wildness will turn very tame, I tell you on my honor, if you attack the Angevin, who has my oath of guarantee. Heed my advice, sir, and my request as well. I have promised Gamarette that I would dissuade all of you from warfare, and I vowed it in his hands. For my sake, give up your effort, or he will show you his strength in battle." Then King Caillet said, If it is my cousin Gameret, fils du roi Gandin, I will give up my warfare with him. Let go of my bridle." "I will not let go of it until first my eye has seen your uncovered head. Mine is still dazed." Therewith he untied his helmet and took it off. It was now around mid-morning. Gameret did find still more fighting, by which the people of the city were made glad as they witnessed that joust. They all went out on the bastions, and in their view he was a snaring net where everything that came under it was caught. As I heard it told, the worthy man mounted a second horse that flew and hugged the ground with equal adroitness, bold when a charge was on, easily checked or wheeled. And what did he do on this horse? I must say it was bravery. He rode out where the Moors could see him from where their army lay westward along the sea. There was a prince there named Razalik, the most powerful man in Azaguk. His race was a guarantee of that, for he was of royal birth, and never did this man let a day go by without coming out toward the city for a joust. There the hero from Anjou put checkmate to his power. A black lady who had sent him out was to lament that someone overthrew him. A squire, without so much as being asked to do so, brought his master Gameret a spear with a bamboo shaft, and with that he rammed the Moor back off his horse onto the gravel. Nor did he let him lie there very long, but his hand forced him to guarantees of surrender. Therewith the conflict subsided, and a great prize was his. Gameret now saw 8 banners streaking on toward the city, and these he ordered the brave but victoryless man to send back. He further ordered him to follow him inside the walls. This he did. There was no help for it. Gachier, too, had not failed to arrive, and from him the governor had meanwhile learned that his guest had sallied forth. If he did not eat iron like an ostrich, and if he did not chew rocks, it was because he didn't have any at hand. His anger growled and roared like a lion. He tore his hair and said, "I have put my old age to a great greenhorn's uses. The gods sent me a brave and worthy guest, and if he now has more fighting than he can manage, I will never know honor again. What good are shield and sword to me? Anybody that reminds me of this will revile me." With that he turned away from his people and galloped off in the direction of the gate. A squire brought him a shield, which was painted inside and outside with the figure of a transfixed man, made in Isenhart's country. He also brought a helmet in his hand, and a sword which Razalik had taken bravely to fight, but from which he was there parted, that brave and black-complexioned pagan. Far and wide went his fame, and if he later died unbaptized, may he who has all miracles within his power have mercy on that warrior brave. When the governor saw that, he was never so delighted with anything. Recognizing the coat of arms, he went out the gate at a gallop to where he saw his young guest, not at all old, eagerly awaiting further knightly combat. There his host, La Philerost, overtook him and quickly led him back in. Never did he strike down another opponent there. "Sir," said La Philerost, "le Comte du Château, tell me, did hand of yours conquer Razalik? If so, our country is safe from war for good, and all, for he was over all the army of the Moors, those vassals of loyal Isenhart, who have done us injury. Our sufferings are at an end. An angry god gave them the command to attack us here with their army. Now their champion is brought low." He brought Gameret in, loath as the latter was to come. The queen rode down to meet him, and with her hand she grasped his bridle and untied the fastenings of his mouth-guard. The governor was obliged to surrender the bridle to her, nor did his pages forget to come running to their master. Through the city, the wise queen was seen leading her guest, who had won the victory. At the moment she deemed proper, she dismounted. "Oh, but your pages are devoted. You seem to think you are going to lose this man. He will be well attended without you. Take his horse and lead it away. Here, I am his friend." Up there he found numerous ladies, but his armor was removed by the black hands of the queen. In a bed beautifully adorned, and with a coverlet of sable, there was granted to him an intimate honor. No one was present. The maidens had gone out and shut the door after them, and the queen bestowed a sweet and noble love, as did Gameret, her heart's beloved. Yet their skins were not alike in color. Offerings aplenty the inhabitants of the city brought to their gods. And what commands did brave Razalik receive when he came off the battlefield? Whatever they were, he performed them faithfully. And yet his grief was renewed for his master Isenhart. The governor was informed that he had arrived, and then there was a jubilation. To Gamarette princes came from all parts of the queen's land of Zazamank to express their gratitude for the victory he had achieved. In formal joust he had overthrown 24 knights and brought back the horses of most of them. Captured were princes 3. In their retinues rode many a knight into the courtyard up at the palace. Well rested now and breakfasted, and in fine-made garments, splendidly arrayed, was the country's supreme lord. She, who was formerly termed a maiden, was now a wife. And as she led him forth by the hand, she said, "My person and my country are now subject to this knight, provided enemies will allow it so to be." Then compliance was accorded to a courteous request of Gamarette's. "Come nearer, my lord Razalik. You shall kiss my wife. The like shall you do also, Lord Gachier." And Hutiger the Scotsman, proud, he bade kiss her on the lips. He still bore his wounds from the joust. Now he bade them all be seated, and remaining standing himself, he said good-naturedly, "I would be happy to see here also my cousin, if that might be with the permission of the man who took him captive. As his kinsman, I have no course but to set him free." With a happy smile, the queen bade them fetch him quickly. In through the crowd, the lovable Beaucomte made his way. Knightly deeds had left him with wounds, but he had done many a brave action in the course of them. Gachier the Norman had brought him there. Courteous he was. His father was a Frenchman, and he was the child of Calet's sister. His journey had been made in a woman's service. His name was Kalirjakak, and he surpassed the beauty of all men. When Gamarette saw him, their faces attested their kinship, for they very much resembled one another. He bade the great queen kiss him and embrace him. And then he said, "And now come over here to me also." And the lord kissed him too. They were delighted to see each other. But then Gamarette said, "Alas, sweet young man, whatever brought your tender self to this country? Tell me, did a woman give you such a command?" "They give few commands, sir, to me. It was my uncle Gachier who brought me here, and he well knows the reason why. I have 1,000 knights here for him, and I am in his service. To Rouen in Normandy, I went to answer his call to arms, and took those young heroes to him. And for his sake I made the journey from Champagne. Now harm will turn her skill and cunning against him, unless you act to your own honor. If you will so permit, allow him to profit from his kinship to me, and allow me to relieve his distress. I will leave the matter up to you. Now go with my lord Gachier and bring Calet to me here." Directly they set about fulfilling the hero's request, and brought him in as he had bidden. Then he too was graciously received and embraced by the great queen. She kissed the warrior graciously, as well she might in honor due, for he was her husband's aunt's son, and by lineage a noble king. Laughingly the host went on to say, "God knows, Lord Calet, that if I were to take Toledo from you, and your country Spain, for the advantage of the King of Gascony, who in his anger is doing you much injury, that would be disloyal of me, for you are my aunt's son. The best men, the very core of knighthood, are here with you. Who forced you into this expedition?" To which the proud young warrior replied, "My uncle Schiltung, whose daughter Fridebrand married, ordered me to serve Fridebrand, and thus the latter, for his wife's sake, has from me alone 6,000 well-known knights here, and they have hands that are brave. I brought him still more knights besides, but a good share of them have gone away. In support of the Scots there were here these brave contingents. From Greenland battle-seasoned heroes came to him, and 2 kings with strong forces. A flood of knighthood they brought, and many a ship. That contingent pleased me mightily. Here, too, for his sake was Morholt, whose prowess has both strength and skill. These have now gone home, and with my men I shall do as my lady here instructs. My service shall be manifest to her, but for my service you have no cause to thank me. Our kinship requires as much. These dauntless heroes are now yours. If they were baptized men, as mine are, and of the same color of skin, There would never be a man crowned but that he would get his fill of fighting from them. But I am amazed to see you here. Tell me about that, and how it happened." "I arrived yesterday, and today I became master of this country. The queen took me captive with her own hand, and with love I defended myself, for my wits so counseled me. I gather that that sweet weapon of defense has overcome both armies." "You mean because I avoided battle with you? You shouted loudly to me. What did you want to get from me by force? Let me bargain with you some other way." "I did not recognize your anchor. My aunt's husband Gandon never wore it. But I recognized your ostrich perfectly well, and the serpent head on your shield, too. Your ostrich stood tall without a nest. I saw by the look of you that you didn't much like the oaths of surrender that 2 men had given me. They had put up a stiff fight. It could easily have gone the same with me. I would have to admit, even to a devil whose ways I can never get to like, that if you had put up such a battle against stout heroes as you did, the women would eat him like sugar. Your mouth grants me too much praise. No, I cannot flatter, but look for other support from me." They called Razalik to come over and join them. Courteously, Caled said, "My cousin Gameret has taken you prisoner with his hand." "That he has, sir. I have recognized the hero as the man from whom the land of Azaguk will never withhold homage, now that our Lord Isenheart may not wear the crown there. He was slain in the service of her who is now your cousin's wife. For her love he gave his life. But my kiss to her has abolished that account. I have lost my lord and kinsman, and am now ready to do homage as a knight to your aunt's son. And if he will compensate me for that loss, I will pledge my hand to him. Thus he will have riches and honor and everything that Tancanis bequeathed to Isenheart. Embalmed amid the army there Isenheart lies, and on his wounds I have gazed every day since the spearhead broke his heart." And he drew it forth from his bosom on a silken ribbon. Then the warrior put it back again against his bosom next to the bear skin. "It is still broad daylight, and if my lord Kilirjakak will carry the message to the army as I request, my princes shall ride along as his escort." He sent a ring along as token. Then those who were of Hel's color came, all the princes that were on hand, up through the city to the castle hall. With conferral of flags, his hand bestowed fiefs of land upon the princes of Azaguk. Each was delighted with his portion, yet the best portion remained for Gameret, their lord. These came first, and now those of Zazamank pressed forward with grand display, not shabby at all, to receive from him, as their lady bade, lands and usufructs, to each one as was fitting. Property fled from their lord. Now Prothisilus, who was a prince of high lineage, had left a dukedom, which Gameret now bestowed upon a man who had gained much honor with his hand, and who from battle had never shrunk back. La Philerost, le Comte du Château, received it that day amid conferral of flags. Then the lordly princes of Azaguk took the Scotsman Heutiger and Gachier the Norman, and led them before their lord, who pronounced them free upon their request. For this they thanked Gameret. Turning to Heutiger the Scotsman, they urged him earnestly, "Leave the tent here for our master, as a reward for his adventure. Isenheart's life was taken from us when he gave away his armor and equipment to Fridebrand. The pledge of his joy was lost. He himself lies upon his funeral bier. His unrequited service brought him excessive grief. To Fridebrand the equipment was given, that treasure of our country, and never on earth was anything so fine. The helmet was thick and strong, and made of diamond, a good companion in battle." Thereat Heutiger's hand vowed that when he got to his master's country he would gather all the equipment and send it back here in prime condition. This he did from no constraint. All the princes present now begged the king for permission to withdraw, and forthwith they left the palace. Devastated though his lands might be, Gameret could nevertheless lavish such gifts by way of rewards as if gold grew on his trees. He distributed rich presents, and his vassals and kinsmen accepted his wealth. This was the queen's wish. Many a battle had preceded the wedding festivities, but they were all set right in this way. I did not think this up myself. I was told that Isenheart was buried like a king by the men who had known him. The taxes from his lands, to the amount of a year's income, they expended on the costs, and did so of their own free will. Gameret bade Isenheart's people keep his great wealth for each of them to enjoy for himself. Next morning the foreigners before the fortress vacated the country. All who were there departed, and many a stretcher they carried as they went. The field stood bare of shelters, save for one tent, and that was a large one. The king ordered it carried on board ship, saying to the people that he was going to transport it to Azaguk, but with those words he deceived them. Here the proud man remained until he began to grieve because he found no nightly activity, and then his joy was pawned to sorrow. Yet his black wife was dearer to him than his own life. Never was there a woman more endowed with charms, and that lady's heart never failed to include in its retinue a worthy company of womanly virtues and true modesty. In the city of Seville was born the man whom, some time later, he asked to take him away. He had already guided him many a mile, and he had brought him here. He was not like a Moor in color, and this ship captain replied, "You must quietly conceal this from those whose skins are black. My boats are so swift that they can never overtake us, and we shall get away." He ordered his gold put on board ship, and now I must tell you of departure. By night the worthy man went away, and it was done secretly. And when he deserted his wife, she had within her body a child, 12 weeks alive. The wind bore him swiftly away. In her girdle purse that lady discovered a letter written by her husband's hand. In French, a language which she knew, the writing informed her, "To one love, another love, sends love. By this journey I am a thief. I steal it from you to spare you grief. I cannot conceal from you, lady, the fact that were your faith of the same law as mine, I would yearn for you eternally, for I do suffer for your sake always, even so. If the child of us two should in his features resemble a man, then he will indeed be rich in valor. He is born out of Anjou. Love will be his lady. In battle he will be a storm of hail, to foes a hard neighbor. My son should know that his grandfather was named Gandin, and that he died from knightly deeds. His father before him suffered the same fate, and his name was Adance. Rarely did his shield remain whole. He was by race a Briton, he and Utependragon, being offspring of 2 brothers who are named herewith. One was called Lazalies, and the other Bricus. The father of these was named Mazadan. Into Famorgan he was taken by a fairy, and her name was Tur de la Choy, and he was a fettering chain upon her heart. From these 2 is my line descended, which will shine in brilliance forever. Each one since has worn a crown, and each has had no lack of honor. Lady, if you will receive baptism, you may yet win me back." Nor did she wish it otherwise. Alas, how swiftly this has come about! If only he will come back, I shall do just that. In whose charge has his manly courtesy left the fruit of his love here behind? Alas, for loving companionship! Now sorrow with its power must control my life forever. To do honor to his God, the lady said, I would gladly agree to be baptized and live as he desired. Grief brought warfare to her heart. Her joy sought the withered bough, as the turtle dove still does, for that bird was ever of the same mind. When she, a loved one, loses, she will perch upon a withered tree. In due time, this lady was delivered of a son, who was of 2 colors, and in whom God had wrought a marvel, for he was both black and white. Immediately the queen kissed him over and over again on his white spots, and on her little child the mother bestowed the name Phyrophis Angevin. He was to become a waster of forests, for the jousts of his hand were to shatter many a spear and riddle many a shield with holes. Like a magpie was the color of his hair and of his skin. It was more than a year now since Gameret had been so much praised there in Zazamanc, and his hand had rested triumph. Now he was still sailing the sea, and the swift winds were bringing him woe. He saw a silken sail glowing red, and the boat that bore it was also bearing the messengers sent by the Scotsman Fridebrant to the Lady Bellicane. He was begging her to forgive him, although he had lost his kinsman on her account for ever having attacked her. They had with them the diamond helmet, a sword, a coat of mail, and a pair of leg guards. You may see a great marvel in the fact that their boat encountered him, as the story vowed to me it did. They gave him the knightly equipment, and he swore that his lips would be the guarantee of their message when he came to her, whereupon they parted. I was told that the sea brought him to a harbor, and from there he made his way to Seville. With gold the brave man rewarded the ship captain for his labors, whereupon they parted, to the latter's regret.